Hi, everybody, and welcome to INTR 101 College Success Strategies. So today we're going to be talking about goal setting. It's a really big part of life and especially part of college. So what you'll come to find is that I like really terrible memes, and here's one. So I often find that folks, when they're making goals, they start with making a list of dreams, but they don't actually take all of the time needed to formulate achievable and really thoughtful goals. And I'm someone who's done this too, and it's something that we all do. So what we're going to talk about today is diving in a little bit deeper with our goals. How do we make them actionable? How do we make it so that we can actually achieve those goals? So what I want you to do is take a moment and think about what is challenging about setting and completing goals. What sort of roadblocks do you most often run into? And now we're going to talk about how to kind of work through some of those challenging parts of it and setting goals in a really effective manner. So the method that we're going to use is the IDAHO goal. And what that is an acronym for all of the different steps of setting a goal. Now you might have heard of SMART goals before, and this is really similar to that with just an extra step. So first, what you're going to do is identify the goal. What do you actually want to do? What is the thing that you're trying to accomplish? Then you're going to decide the duration. How long will it take? Now, this might have some outside influences like a due date or deadline, but if it's a life goal, you still want to set a timeline for yourself. Next, you're going to actualize the steps. And what that means is, what are the small steps you're going to take to reach that larger goal? Then you're going to consider your help and accountability. What resources are available to you as you're trying to accomplish this goal? And finally, you want to observe your progress. So asking yourself, how's it going? And this is something that actually occurs all throughout the goal process. So as you're working towards that goal, you need to be checking in with yourself and seeing how it's going. Let's dive in then. We're going to start with the letter I. Identify your goal. Now, what's really important about goal setting is you want to ensure that your goals are specific and achievable. And what does that mean? If I set the goal of, I want to buy a space shuttle and fly to the moon in 2 weeks, that's not achievable. It's specific, but it's not necessarily achievable. Now, if I set the goal of, I want to do well this semester, that's achievable, but it's not really specific. I don't have what it is or how I'm going to do well or what benchmark I'm setting for myself. An example of a specific and achievable goal would be completing my English 101 assignment early. So there are no questions about what the specific task is. It's completing that assignment. And you give yourself the deadline of early. Now, we can always add some more specificity to this, and we definitely should, but it gives you a pretty concrete timeline. Now, when you're thinking about the goal, you want to consider what that definition of success is and how that plays into your goal. So what does completing your English assignment early look like? You know, does that mean just getting the bare minimum in? Does that mean getting an 80% or higher? Does it mean turning it in 2 days before it's due or a day before it's due? So figuring out what those exact parameters are for success and the end goal is really helpful at this point. And then how does your definition of success play into the completion of the actual goal itself? So keep in mind that we want to define success for ourselves. We want to build that personal definition of success to help motivate us when we're going through rough times. So really specifically, maybe your goal is just to complete a 7-page paper early or on time. And maybe it's for a class that you really don't like, but kind of returning back to your definition of success and how you want to complete that class or that semester can really help motivate you to get that done. If you want to know more about defining success, you can check out one of the previous videos for this class. So let's move on to the next step. D, decide the duration. Goals need deadlines. When we just have a goal that's kind of ethereal of maybe be successful, we don't have any point at which we've hit that success. And what that does is it makes it really hard to continue with our motivation towards it. So having some sort of end or having some sort of like top point or bar that you're trying to reach really helps maintain that motivation. In the deciding the duration step, you're going to be setting a timeline for yourself. What's the end date? And that timeline plays into the next letter of our acronym, actualizing the steps. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our big goal. Maybe our big goal is ending, or maybe the big goal is like completing a 7-page paper by February 15th. How are we going to actually break down that assignment into smaller steps that are easier to accomplish over time? Because if we just have the end goal in mind, it can be really hard to get started. In this step, you want to think about something called an action plan. And we'll actually go really in depth in action plans when we talk about time management. But in general, an action plan is a way to break down larger tasks or projects into smaller chunks. For each step that you give yourself, you're also going to give an intermediate deadline. Now, when you're doing this, you want to write down some barriers and solutions to the barriers. So kind of thinking ahead about what are things that you might run into. One example could be if you're working on a group project, a barrier might be communicating with your other group members. So you want to kind of come up with a solution beforehand so that if that barrier pops up, you've already got something planned out. During this step, you also want to reflect on the support that you have and find your go-to people just in case. Now here's an example of an action plan for completing an English paper. The dates are a little funky here, but just roll with me. So first of all, I'm going to schedule an appointment with the Writing Center on the 19th. Then I'm going to prepare a rough draft by the 21st. I'm going to submit the rough draft to the Writing Center. I'm going to edit the draft with the writing tutor's suggestions, and then I'm going to submit the final draft. So there are a couple of things to think about in this action plan. One, each step is really specific. Scheduling an appointment with the Writing Center by a given date doesn't leave any sort of like vagueness up to it. And then the other important thing to note on this action plan is that there's a little bit of flexibility. So you'll see that the submit the final draft deadline is a day before the actual deadline for the paper. And that's a really good thing to incorporate into an action plan if you have the ability to, just in case something pops up. Because let's be real, life happens. You might get sick, you might have another class that takes a lot more of your time than expected. So providing some of that flexibility into this plan will really help mitigate those frustrations later. Now we're going to jump to our last letter, or second to last letter, H, help and accountability. What resources are available to help me in this goal? So as we talk about help and accountability, I want to focus on a quote from a director of academic success at the College of Law at the University of Idaho, Nancy Lubert. And she says that it is responsible and professional to use your resources. Oftentimes when I meet with students, there's a lot of trepidation about going in and asking for help. Now, this comes up for a lot of reasons. One is there's often the association of like asking for help means that you're failing. That's definitely not true. Asking for help means that you're serious about getting your work done and you want to make sure that it's getting done to the best of your ability. The best way to do that is to seek advice and help from people who are experts in the field. So using those resources can help make sure that the final project, the final paper, the final assignment that you're working on is as good as it could possibly be. Additionally, like Nancy says, it's very professional to use these resources. So once you get out of college and you're on a job or you're freelancing or anything like that, reaching out to other professionals in the field, folks who have been in the field that you're in longer, is a really fantastic thing to do. It's very professional. It's a skill that you want to build now while you have the chance, so that when you do get into that job sphere, it's a lot easier to do. So a couple of resources that are available to you that might help with some of your academic endeavors are things like academic coaching, career services, the Counseling and Testing Center, drop-in tutoring, the LGBTQA office, Office of Multicultural Affairs, SI Pass, and the Women's Center. So these different offices can help with both kind of concrete academic skills like tutoring or SI Pass for learning the material and really grasping those concepts a bit better in your classes. And then offices like the Office of Multicultural Affairs, LGBTQA office, and the Women's Center can help support you in a more social context. So if your goal on campus this semester is to get better connected with your community, starting with an office like that is a great place. Now let's talk about the last letter of our acronym. Observe your progress. You want to check in with yourself. How are things actually going? Is everything going to plan? Am I on schedule with the action plan that I created? So just being really mindful about how your progress is in your goal setting endeavor is the big point here. And it's something that you should do throughout. So I often encourage students to check in with the goal after they complete one of the steps. Like, how did that go? Am I ahead of schedule? Am I a little behind? Do I need to make adjustments? Is this plan making sense? And is the goal still achievable? Now we're going to try out a couple of examples of goal setting and go over what works, what doesn't, are there any questions around them? So our first example, the goal is to pass Bio 114 Exam 3. It's due November 2nd. Their action plan is to study chapters 15 through 25. They say that they don't need help, and to observe their progress, they've already gotten some studying done. Now, what do we think about this goal? Well, personally, I think this goal could use a lot more structure. That's a lot to study. That's 10 chapters of material, but there's no real steps on how to do it. They didn't break down when it is that they're going to study each chapter or anything like that. Also, even though they say they don't need help, there is tutoring available for this course, and it really should be included in that help portion. And that's just because you want to make sure that even if you don't think you need it, you know where the tutoring is, when it is, and how to access it, just in case a barrier pops up and you need that help. Okay, our next example. This student wants to apply for a BP internship. The application date is February 15th. Their action plan is to read the application, prepare materials, revise by February 10th, and submit the application by February 14th. For their help, they're going to ask one of their friends to look at it, and to observe their progress, they're going to check in by February 10th to see how things are going. So I think this goal has a lot more structure, right? Like, they gave some clear actionable steps of how they're going to accomplish it, but they really need to include some intermediate deadlines. So we don't know when they're going to read the application, what materials they need to prepare, or when they're going to do that. Another quick thing is that they could include an office like career services into their help and accountability. Friends are awesome, but the career service professionals, that's their whole job, is to help people get internships and jobs and different opportunities like that. So having them reach out to an office like that could be really helpful for this. So a couple of things to remember about goal setting, especially this format. Goals provide structure and focus. And this is true for either the long-term or the short-term, right? So we often talk about 5-year plans, and those are really awesome. Sometimes they can be hard to plan for. So we also want to think about our short-term goals, right? Like, how do those play into our really long-term goals? Next, when it comes to goal setting, be specific. Make sure you know exactly what it is that you're trying to accomplish. So giving yourself some sort of really easy to grasp deadline helps with motivation as well. And next, find some balance. You want to make sure that you're challenging yourself with your goals, right? It's a good way to grow. You want to ensure that the things that you're setting out for are going to be helpful for you in the long run, that they feel great, that they bring you joy. But you also want to make sure that they aren't like totally unachievable or impractical or something that's causing you way more stress than it's worth. So strike that balance between that. And then you want to make sure that your goals are used for further success. So completing one goal should be another great way to jump off to your next thing. If you think about college, your first goal might be to get through the semester, right? And every semester that you get to gets you closer to a longer term goal of, say, graduating. And once you graduate, that's a good jumping off point for getting ready to go out into the course of work that you really enjoy, or the field of work that you really enjoy. So all of these goals kind of build on each other for some, feeling of success for yourself. So that is all that I have for you on goal setting. Please let me know if you have any questions. You can always reach out to me, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.